गंधर्व गिरिधारी श्री श्री राधा विनोद बिहारी जू की जाय। श्री गोविंद गोपीनाथ मदन मोहन जू की जाय। नित्याल प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद शुतर शुत शिशिमार भक्ति वेदांत नारायण गोसाई महाराज श्रील गुरुदेव की जाय। नित्याल प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद शुतर शुत शिशिमार भक्ति वेदांत वामन गोसाई महाराज की जाय। नित्याल प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद शुतर शुत शिशिमार भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी महाराज श्रील प्रभुपाद की जाय। नित्याल प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद शुतर शुत शिशिमार भक्ति प्रज्ञान केशव गोसाई महाराज की जय। नित्याल प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद शुतर शुत शिशिमार भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोसाई प्रभुपाद की जय। नित्याल प्रविष्ट महाभगवत श्रील गौरक्षरदास बाबाजी महाराज की जय। नित्याल प्रविष्ट श्रील सच्चिदानंद भक्ति विनोद ठाकुर की जय। नित्याल प्रविष्ट वैष्णव सार्वभौम श्री जगन्नाथ दास बाबाजी महाराज की जय। श्री रूपानु गौड़ीय गुरु वर्ग की जय। श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल भट्टदास रघुनाथ शारद गोसाई प्रभु की जय। श्री स्वरूप दामोदर राय रामानंदादि श्री गौर पार्षद वृंद की जय। जय श्री राय रामानंद की जय। तदीय शुभ तिरुभाव तिथि की जय। जय श्री स्वरूप दामोदर राय रामानंद सॉरी जय नामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौर मंडल ब्रज मंडल मथुरा वृंदावन धाम की जय। सर्व अभिष्ट प्रदत्त गिरिराज महाराज की जय। श्री राधा कुंड श्याम कुंड की जय। श्री यमुना देवी गंगा देवी की जय। श्री तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय। श्री भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री पूर्णमासी योग माया की जय। श्री गोपेश्वर महादेव की जय। जय श्री हरि नाम संकीर्तन की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। समागत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। जय श्री जय नित्यल प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद श्रीमद् भक्ति बल्लभ तीर्थ गोस्वामी महाराज की जय। Nitya Vishwa Śrīla Bhakti Daita Madhav Goswami Maharaj ki jai. All the associates of Jagadguru Śrīla Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Samagata Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo. Hare Krishna. Okay, we'll do a very short Jaidvani and then begin. One second. Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam yena tasmai Shri Guruve namaha. Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadbhaktaya Namo Namaha. Śrī Caitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Smara Gaura Gadadhara Kelikalang Bhava Gaura Gadadhara Pakshachara Shrinu Gaura Gadadhara Charu Kathang Bhaja Godrumakanana Kunja Vidum Tavai Vasmi Na Jivami Tvaya Vina Iti Vigyaya Devi Tvang Nayamang Charanantikam Bhaktya Vihina Aparada Lakshaya Kshiptashtakama Madhe Kripa Maitvam Sharanam Prapanna Vrinde Namaste Charanarvindam Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Dandavat pranams. Nri Hari Prabhu, Bhavatarani Mataji, Rukmini Didi, Sarveshwari Mataji, Yashoda Mataji, Sarveshwari Mataji. Oh, there's two Sarveshwari Mataji. Sorry. Okay, and let's see on YouTube and Facebook. I don't know who's there because nobody wrote a comment yet, but yeah, Dandavat pranams, whoever that is, and pranam to all the devotees watching in the future, like Jaydev Prabhu and Shachi Devi. All right, so today we are going to be reading from Śrīla Bhakti Ballabha Tīrtha Goswami Mahārāja's book, Śrī Caitanya and his associates. We'll read the section about Rāya Rāmānanda, whose disappearance day it is today. It's around 5,000 words. And Haribo Rohini Nandan Prabhu, Dandavat pranams. Okay. Yeah, so I think it'll take probably, I think we'll finish right on time. 5,000 words. Let's see. Okay, where is it? Jai Śrīla Bhakti Ballabha Tīrtha Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Okay, Śrī Rāmānanda Rai. Priya Narmasaka Kaschir Arjuna Pandavorjunam Militva Samabhur Ramananda Raya Prabho Priya Ato Radha Krishna Bhakti Prema Tattvadikam Kriti Ramanando Gorachandrang Pratyavarnayaran Anvaham Lalite Tyahure Keyat Tare Ke Nanumanyante Bhavanandam pratipraha gauro yat tvam pritapati gopyarjuni yaya sardhama eki bhuya pipandava arjuno yad raya ramananda ityahuruttama arjuniya bhavaturnam arjunopi cha pandava iti parmottara khande vyaktam evam virajate tasmar etatrayam ramanandaraya mahashaya. Okay, so this is from Gaur Ganodesh Tipika. He says, there are two Arjunas in Krishna Lila. One is a Priya Narmasaka and Vraj. The other one is one of the Pandavas. These two combined to become Mahaprabhu's dear companion, Ramananda Rai. So Krishna's Priya Narmasaka, Arjuna and Vraj, and the Pandava Arjuna. They came together to become Mahaprabhu's dear companion, Ramananda Rai. Ramananda was very knowledgeable in the teachings of loving devotion to Radha and Krishna, which he described to Gaurachandra on a daily basis. Some people say that Ramananda Rai was Lalita Saki, while others do not. Mahaprabhu himself told Bhavananda Rai that he was Pandu, the husband of Kunti and the father of the Pandavas. Padma Puran states that the Pandava Arjuna became the Gopi Arjuniya. Thus, the most aware say that in Ramananda Rai, all these three personalities combined. What are the three personalities? The Krishna's Priya Namasaka Arjuna, the Pandava Arjuna, and that Pandava Arjuna also became the Gopi Arjuniya, and also Lalita Saki. And I'm used to hearing, like I think it was Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur who explains that Ramananda Rai is Vishaka Saki. So, okay, let's see. I think let's see what Śrīla Bhakti Ballabha Tīrtha Goswami says. As stated in these verses from Gaur Ganodesh Tipika, some people hold that Ramananda Rai was an avatar of Lalita. Some others are of the opinion that he was Vishaka. In his commentary on Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 8, verse 23, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes, The love that awakened in Ramananda and Mahaprabhu when they met was the same as the love that Vishaka had for Radha and Krishna in Vraj, and that which Radha and Krishna had for Vishaka. Thus, it is clear that Śrīla Bhaktivinoda Thakur saw Ramananda Rai as Vishaka. Ramananda Rai was one of the Lord's 3.5 most intimate associates. And here's a verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita about the 3.5 most intimate associates. This is Antya Lila, chapter 2, verse 105 to 106. It says, "The Lord accepted that Shiki Mahiti's sister was one of Radha's friends. In the entire world, there were only 3.5 devotees who were as worthy. They were Shri Swarup Damodar Goswami, Ramananda Rai, and Shiki Mahiti. Shiki Mahiti's sister was the half person." So Ramananda's social status. And the reason for Shiki Mahiti's sister being the half person, I don't know this is just like a total speculation, but since Mahaprabhu was a sannyasi, so it's not possible for this is what I'm saying could be totally bogus, so just letting you know that. But yeah, Shiki Mahiti's sister Madhavi Devi was in a female body, and Mahaprabhu was a sannyasi, and so she wouldn't be able to come as close to Mahaprabhu as Swarup Damodar and Raya Ramananda and Shiki Mahiti, like that would just be inappropriate like that for etiquette. And so in that way she couldn't be, but that might just be a fully made up reason or external reason, and there's probably maybe even something more deep. But yeah, anyways, probably shouldn't have even said anything. So Ramananda's social status. Ramananda Rai's father was named Bhavananda Rai. He was born in a family of the Orishan Karana caste. Bhavananda Rai was previously King Pandu. He had 5 sons, of whom Ramananda Rai was the eldest. The other 4 brothers were Gopinath Patanayak, Kalanidhi, Sudhanidhi, and Vaninath Patanayak. The Lord states in Chaitanya Charitamrita, he says, "You are Pandu himself, and your wife is Kunti. Your 5 sons are the 5 Pandavas." That's from Madhya Lila, chapter 10, verse 53. Manohar Rai, a descendant of Ramananda Rai, has written his family's history. Śrīla Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur has summarized some details of this account in his Anubhashya of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So, Orishan society considers the Karana community to be part of the Shudra caste. Ramananda Rai was born into this community. Nevertheless, though he was considered by society to be a Shudra by birth, he was a de facto Brahman. Indeed, as a Vaishnava Paramahansa, he was a spiritual master to the Brahmanas. Not only was he a Brahmana, but he was a spiritual master to the Brahmanas. By Krishna's will, the creator Brahma himself appeared, and that's the end of the quote from Śrīla Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada. By Krishna's will, the creator Brahma himself appeared in an outcast family as Haridas Thakur in order to show that one's family and one's race have absolutely no importance. Born as a Muslim, Haridas Thakur only enriched Lord Gauranga's pastimes. And this is a quote from Chaitanya Bhagavat, Adi Khanda, chapter 16, verse 237 to 240. Haridas Thakur was born in a low caste family on the Lord's desire, in order to show that caste and class have no importance at all. All the scriptures say that a devotee of Vishnu, though born in a lowly family, is still worshipable by all. What will one's caste do for one born in a high caste who does not worship Krishna? He will go to hell in spite of his high birth. Haridas Thakur took a low birth just to bear witness to these scriptural statements. And this point we see all throughout this book, Śrī Caitanya and his associates. He mentions this point over and over and over again, just to really Uh, yeah. So a Vaishnava is beyond the qualities of the material nature. Anyone who considers a devotee in terms of his birth or race is destined for a hellish existence. Arche Vishnu Shiladir Gurushu Naramatir Vaishnave Jati Buddhir Vishnur Vaishnavanam Kalimala Matane Padatirtem Bubudhi Shri Vishnur Namni Mantre Sakala Kalushahe Shabda Samanya Buddhir Vishnu Sarveshvareshe Taritara Samadhir Yasya Va Narakisa. Anyone who considers the deity of Vishnu to be nothing but stone, the Guru to be an ordinary human being, or the Vaishnava to be a member of a particular caste or race, who takes the holy water which has washed Vishnu or the Vaishnava's feet, and can destroy all the sins of the age of Kali to be ordinary water, who thinks that the name or mantra of Vishnu, which destroys all evils, is the same as any other sounds, or who takes Vishnu to be the same as anything other than him, suffers hellish existence. Yasyava narakisa. A person is always a resident of Narak. Bhavananda Rai made his home in Brahmagiri, or Alanath, about 12 miles west of Puri. Rai Ramananda was King Prataparudra's governor in Vidyanagar, and according to some opinions, he was one of his ministers. According to the Bhajan Nirnay, Ramananda Rai was a disciple of Raghavendra Puri and grand disciple of Madhavendra Puri. Interesting. Okay, the disciple of Raghavendra Puri and grand disciple of Madhavendra Puri. Okay, Sarvabhauma tells the Lord about Ramananda. The Lord took sannyas in the month of Magh and arrived in Puri during the month of Falgun. After celebrating the Dol Yatra in Puri, Mahaprabhu delivered Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya in the month of Chaitra. In the month of Vaishak, he set off on his pilgrimage to South India. Though Mahaprabhu had decided to travel alone, Nityananda Prabhu convinced him to take a servant, Krishnadas, as a traveling companion. As he was leaving, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya gave the Lord 4 kopins and bahirvas, and requested him to visit Ramananda Rai on the banks of the Godavari. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, "My lord, you must fulfill this request of mine. In the town of Vidyanagar, on the bank of the Godavari, there is a responsible government officer named Ramananda Rai. Please do not neglect him, thinking that he belongs to a Shudra family engaged in materialistic activities. Please take my word for it, that you should meet him without fail. If anyone is fit to associate with you, it is he. No other devotee can compare with him in the knowledge of divine sentiments. He has attained the highest limits of learning and is experienced in the science of devotional sentiments. If you converse with him, you will recognize his exalted character." When I first met him, I could not understand that everything he said and did was transcendental. I made fun of him simply because he was a Vaishnav. By your mercy, I can now understand the truth about Ramananda Rai. In talking with him, you also will acknowledge his greatness. That was all from the Madhya Lila, chapter 7, verse 61 to 67. Śrīla Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada has commented as follows on verse 63. To superficial understanding, Ramananda Rai was not a sannyasi wearing a loincloth. In common understanding, those who are courtiers engaged in government service are materialistic. But Ramananda was, in fact, a learned person who was a de facto sannyasi, a perfected human being. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya had previously been able to recognize his natural qualities as a Vaishnava, even though he himself was not a Vaishnava at that time. When he took to devotional service by the grace of the Lord, he reconsidered his opinion of Ramananda and realized the extent of his qualifications, calling him an Adhikari Rasik Bhakta, the most highly qualified authority in the matters of devotional sentiment. So now Śrīla Bhakti Ballabha Tīrtha Gosvāmī continues. He says, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was the avatar of Brihaspati and the court pundit of King Prataparudra. He was so learned that even though he was a householder, he had sannyasis as his disciples. Nevertheless, He had been unable to recognize that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was the Supreme Lord himself, nor was he able to identify Ramananda Rai as his most intimate associate. If he was unable to do so, then how much more difficult would it be for others? No one is able to understand the glories of the Lord and his devotees without being blessed by their mercy. And now here's a quote from Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila chapter 6. It says, "The process of inference is of no value for understanding the nature of the Supreme Lord. Without the Lord's mercy, no person can come to know him. One to whom the Lord gives even a slight drop of mercy is able to understand his nature." Mahaprabhu meets Ramananda. Mahaprabhu set off to the south, blessing the inhabitants of the land by bestowing devotion to Krishna on them. He visited Kurmastan, delivering the Brahman also named Kurma, and giving everyone the order to preach devotional service to Krishna. He saved Vasudeva Vipra and then went on to Simhachalan, where he danced before the deity of Jiyar Nrsimha. Then he went on to the Godavari river, which in his vision was the Yamuna, and the woods on its banks, Vrindavan. He joyfully crossed the river and came to the place known as Kovur, where he bathed in the river and waited there, hoping to meet Ramananda Rai. At the same time, Ramananda Rai passed by with fanfare. When he saw Mahaprabhu's supernatural form, he descended from his palanquin and paid his obeisances to the Lord. Though Mahaprabhu recognized him, he asked him to identify himself. Ramananda Rai replied that he was nothing but a lowly Shudra servant. When the Lord heard him speak in this humble manner, he immediately embraced him. Both the Lord and his servant fell on the onset of divine emotions, and both experienced the 8 ecstatic transformations of prema. The Brahmins who were accompanying Ramananda Rai were astonished to see such a display. They thought, and this is a quote from same chapter 8 of Madhya Lila, verses 26 to 27. The Brahmins thought, "This sannyasi is as effulgent as the Brahman. Why is he crying while embracing this Shudra? The governor, Ramananda Rai, is a scholar and normally very serious. Why has he suddenly become so emotional upon being touched by the sannyasi, as though intoxicated?" Seeing that there were outsiders present, the Lord controlled his emotions and told Ramananda Rai that he had been told by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya to seek him out. Ramananda Rai replied with humility. He said, "This is proof of your mercy on Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. You have touched me, an untouchable, subdued by his love for you. What a difference exists between us. You are the Supreme Lord, Narayan himself, and I, a government servant interested in materialistic activities. Indeed, I am the lowest among men. I am the lowest amongst men of the 4th caste. Even so, you are not contemptuous of my touch. Neither did you fear the Vedic injunctions which forbid one to even look upon a Shudra. Your mercy makes you touch me, even though this activity is condemned both by scripture and by society. You are the Supreme Lord himself, so who can understand your intention?" Though the Brahmins had never shown the slightest interest in bhakti, they too were influenced by the sight of the Lord, and they began to chant the names of Krishna, their voices tremulous with divine. Ramananda Rai said aloud that Mahaprabhu was the Supreme Lord, both in akriti, both in form, and in prakriti, in nature. The Lord immediately responded in a way that would show the greatness of his devotee. And so this is from same chapter 8, verses 44 to 45. He says, the Lord said, "You are a great devotee. Indeed, you are the best amongst them. All those who behold you are immediately affected, so that their hearts melt. What to speak of others? I am a Mayavadi sannyasi, yet I feel the onset of Krishna prema when I touch you." The Lord listens to Ramananda speak. When Mahaprabhu told him of his desire to hear Krishna Katha from his lips, Ramananda Rai requested that he stay for a week or longer so that his own wicked mind can be pacified and purified. The two then each went their own way to finish their duties, returning to the same spot in the evening. Ordinarily, it is seen that a devotee asks the questions and the Lord answers. This time, however, the roles were reversed, and the Lord asked Ramananda to clarify certain spiritual truths, and then he empowered him to respond. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami makes this explicit in the verse which opens the 8th chapter of the Madhya Lila. Sancharya Ramabhida Bhakta Meghe Swabhakti Siddhanta Chayamritani Gorabdhiretar Amuna Vitirnais Tajgyatva Ratna Layatang Prayati. Gauranga is like the ocean of spiritual truths. He filled the cloud named Ramananda with the nectar of the purest conclusions of devotion to himself. Ramananda then rained down that same nectar on the very ocean from which it had come, producing the jewels of transcendental knowledge. A person who has not taken shelter of the Lord may try to understand the supreme truth by using empirical means without achieving any success. Indeed, he will fall into confusion and be unable to understand the words of the Lord. Mahaprabhu asked Ramananda Rai to explain to him, with evidence from the scriptures, the ultimate goal of life. Ramananda started his response by explaining that devotion to Vishnu is the ultimate aim of human achievement, the sadhya. He described the progressive path of different practices leading to that theistic goal, starting from the practice of varnashram dharma, to offering the fruits of one's activities to Krishna, karmarpan, the renunciation of prescribed duties, karma tyag, and then devotion mixed with knowledge, jnana mishra bhakti, offering the scriptural basis for each step. Mahaprabhu rejected each proposal, however, saying that it was superficial or external, for none of these practices had the potential to achieve the pure devotion which he had come to give. By starting this conversation with Ramananda Rai with varnashram dharma, Mahaprabhu showed that all activities which ignore the Vedic principles or go against them are to be completely rejected. When responding to each of Ramananda's suggestions, Mahaprabhu did not say, "Absolutely not." Rather, he used the words, "Eho bahya." This is external. The idea is that one must first give up the activities which are outside the scope of the Vedic standard. Once one is fixed in these principles, one can progressively gain the qualifications to proceed through each of the various steps described by Ramananda Rai. This holds true even though bhakti itself is completely independent and may manifest in an individual through the association of saintly persons, despite one's having no prior qualifications, not having gone through these prior steps. When Ramananda Rai finally answered Mahaprabhu's question by saying, "Pure devotional service without any tinge of speculative knowledge, Gyan Shunya Bhakti, is the means to achieve the supreme perfection." So when Ramananda Rai said that, then Mahaprabhu finally accepted his conclusion. Mahaprabhu's teachings actually begin from this point on. The words Gyan Shunya are meant to completely eradicate any consciousness of the impersonal aspect of the Supreme, but not the kind of knowledge of relationships, the Sambandha Gyan, which is favorable to the attainment of pure devotional service. So there's good Gyan, but that's actually a very interesting topic. Anyways, I'm not going to get into that now. So Śrīla Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes in his Amrita Pravaha Bhashya, the purport is that sacrificing the results of one's actions is better than merely engaging in one's prescribed duties according to the varnashram dharma. The renunciation of fruitive activities is better than simply giving up the fruits. Better than this is the cultivation of knowledge mixed with devotional service. However, despite this progressive improvement in spirituality through these stages, they are all superficial, because these four kinds of practices have no power to achieve pure devotion, or Shuddha Bhakti. The devotions known as Arup Siddha, it's adding a devotional veneer as an afterthought to another action. Sometimes we say dovetailing, right? We use that word. And Sangha Siddha, devotion alloyed with fruitive activities or speculative knowledge. These types of mixed devotion, Arup Siddha or Sangha Siddha, are never to be considered pure devotional service. Pure devotional service is Swarup Siddha Bhakti. i.e., it is devotion both in form and intent. It is entirely and eternally different from these other activities, which have only a superficial relationship to devotional service. The characteristics of Shuddha Bhakti are that it is the characteristics of Shuddha Bhakti are that it is activity executed uniquely for the pleasure of Krishna, devoid of any material desires. It is not hidden by the presence of fruit of intent or identification with Brahman. This is the ultimate goal of spiritual practice, for through it is seen an aspiring devotee. It is present in its purest form when he reaches the perfection of his practice. So this is the ultimate goal of spiritual practice, for though it is seen in an aspiring devotee, it is present in its purest form when he reaches the perfection of his practice. So, as long as Ramananda Rai suggested anything other than following in the footsteps of the great devotees and listening to Krishna Katha from their lips, Mahaprabhu kept saying, Eho Bahya, this is external. Therefore, it is to be understood that pure devotion starts from the moment one begins to hear about the activities and teachings of Lord Krishna from the lips of a pure devotee. From this point, Ramananda Rai described the various stages of loving devotion, the moods of neutrality, servitude, friendship, parenthood, and conjugal love. From there, he went on to describe the supremacy of Radha's love, as well as both Radha's and Krishna's characteristics. Then Mahaprabhu asked questions like, this is how it ends, right? What is the essence of education? And what kind of fame is best for the living entities, for the living being? All these things have been extensively described in the 8th chapter of Chaitanya Charitamrita's Madhya Lila. In order to avoid abnormal expansion of the account of Ramananda's life, we will not go into any of these matters any further here. Ramananda's perception of the Lord's identity. The identity of the Lord cannot remain hidden to his devotee. Ramananda was able to recognize the Lord for who he was. He said, "First I saw you as an ordinary sannyasi. Now I see that you are actually a dark-skinned cowherd boy. I see a golden image standing in front of you. Its golden luster covers your entire body." So that's from verse 268 of that same chapter. Mahaprabhu made an effort to dismiss his identity when he heard this, saying that Raya Ramananda was a great devotee and thus he saw Krishna everywhere. Ramananda, however, clearly stated the primary purpose of the Lord's avatar, the Lord's descent. Mahaprabhu was pleased with his insightful realization, and he displayed his form as the combination of Rasaraj, the king of devotional sentiments, so Rasaraj Krishna, and the embodiment of Mahabhav, Srimati Radharani. When he saw this amazing combined form of the Lord, Ramananda Rai fell to the ground in a faint. When the Lord touched him, he regained consciousness. Ramananda Rai and the Lord remained together blissfully for 10 days before Mahaprabhu continued on his southern pilgrimage. He asked Ramananda Rai to abandon his involvement with government service and join him in Puri when he returned. When Mahaprabhu completed his travels in southern India, he met with Ramananda Rai once again on the banks of the Godavari. He showed him the 2 books, Krishna Karnamrita and Brahma Samhita. So these 2 books that he found on his travels, and which substantiated all that Ramananda Rai had said in their previous conversations. Ramananda Rai copied the 2 manuscripts himself. The Lord remained another week with Ramananda Rai, engaging in the pleasure of discussions about Krishna before heading back to Nilachal. When Mahaprabhu expressed his desire to take Ramananda Rai along with him to Puri, he declined to go with the Lord immediately, as he was obliged to wait for the king's permission and also would need to take care of other official affairs. When he promised to join the Lord in Puri as soon as he promised to join the Lord in Puri as soon as he was able. Ramananda comes to Puri. When the Lord arrived in Puri, he made his permanent residence in the house of Kashi Mishra. King Prataparudra had heard about the Lord and was very enthusiastic about meeting him. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya had assured him that once the Lord had returned from his southern pilgrimage, he would somehow or other arrange for him to have his darshan. Unfortunately, no matter how hard Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya tried to convince him, the Lord insisted that he would not look upon a king. Thus, all attempts to arrange a meeting met with failure. When the king heard that Ramananda Rai wished to return to Puri in order to be close to Mahaprabhu, he was quite happy to grant him permission. He allowed him to leave his duties in the government and continued to pay him a pension. Thus, Ramananda Rai first met with the king in Cuttack and then in Puri, before going to Kashi Mishra's home to meet with the Lord. Ramananda Rai knew just how eager the king was to encounter Mahaprabhu, but rather than bringing up the matter directly, he simply glorified the king, telling Mahaprabhu how much faith the king had in him, how deep was his devotion to Krishna, and how kind he had been to free Ramananda Rai from his governmental duties so that he could serve the Lord directly. By recounting the king's virtues in this way, he was able to soften the Lord's resolve. In the meantime, Nityananda had sent one of the Lord's bahirvasas, outer garments, to King Prataparudra as a consolation. Though this gave the king a great deal of joy, his desire to meet the Lord simply increased, and he asked Ramananda Rai to intercede on his behalf and make some kind of arrangement. When Ramananda Rai finally approached the Lord directly, asking him to be compassionate toward the king, the Lord was not able to refuse him directly. So he agreed that the king was no ordinary materialistic person, but nevertheless, the very title Raja was a type of contamination that he could not overlook. So he agreed to allow the king's son to come and see him, as the son and father are one, in a sense. Mahaprabhu said, "The king certainly possesses all good qualities, but everything has been ruined simply by his possession of the kingly title. If you're still very eager for the king to meet with me, then you can bring me his son in his place. The scripture states that one's self extends to the son. Therefore, if his son comes, it will be equal to his meeting with me." Ramananda Rai then went to inform the king about his talks with the Lord, and according to his request, brought the king's son to see him. This is all from Madhya Lila, chapter 12, verses 53 to 57. Appreciating Rupa's place. Rupa Manjari is the follower of the Sakis Lalita and Vishaka, who are not different from Ramananda Rai. Rupa Gosvāmī discussed the subject of his two plays, Lalita Madhav and Vidagdha Madhav, with Ramananda Rai. When Ramananda Rai asked to hear about the author's worshipable deity, Rupa Gosvāmī recited the second verse of the first act, the play's Mangalacharan. Anarpita charim chirat karunayavatirna kalo samarpaitum unatto jvala rasang svabhakti shriyam haripurta sundara dyuti kadamba sandipita sada hridaya kandare spuratu va shachinandana. May the Supreme Lord, who is the son of Srimati Shachidevi, resplendent with the radiance of molten gold, be always situated in the innermost chambers of your heart. He has appeared in the age of Kali by his causeless mercy to bestow that which was never offered before, the most sublime and radiant mellow of devotional service, the treasure of devotion to him. When Ramananda Rai heard this verse, he began to praise Rupa Gosvāmī with what seems like 1,000 tongues. He said that Rupa Gosvāmī could only have written such an accurate portrayal of such difficult concepts as a result of the Lord's mercy. Pradyumna Mishra meets Ramananda. In order to reveal the extent of Ramananda Rai's transcendental character and identity, Mahaprabhu sent Pradyumna Mishra, who was born in an upper-class Brahmin family, to Ramananda Rai to be instructed, even though Ramananda Rai was not of such a high caste. Pradyumna Mishra was born in Sylhet, but later he made his permanent home in Orissa. He came one day to Mahaprabhu asking to hear some Harikatha, and Mahaprabhu sent him to meet Ramananda Rai. At that time, Ramananda Rai was in the Jagannath Vallabh gardens, engaged in preparing two young Devadasis for a play which was to be given before Lord Jagannath. He was engaged in bathing, dressing, and decorating them, and training them in the songs that they would sing and the dance that they would perform. The first time that Pradyumna Mishra came to see Ramananda Rai, one of his servants told him that he was busy doing this work and he asked Mishra to sit outside and wait. None of Ramananda Rai's servants dared to interrupt him while he was busy preparing the performance which was to be given before Lord Jagannath. Only after he had finished the rehearsal and come outside did he learn that Pradyumna Mishra had come there to hear about Krishna from him. Ramananda Rai showed the Brahmin the appropriate respect and begged forgiveness for the long delay. Mishra realized that it was too late that day for his wish to be fulfilled, and he returned home. Some days later, when Mahaprabhu saw Mishra, he asked him how the meeting with Ramananda Rai had gone and what topics they had discussed. Pradyumna Mishra told him everything that had happened and told the Lord that some doubts had arisen in his mind about Ramananda Rai's activities. The Lord immediately took steps to erase these doubts from the Brahman's mind. He began to glorify Ramananda Rai's extraordinary character with great force. He said, I am a sannyasi. This is a quote from the Antya Lila chapter 5, verses 35 to 42. So Mahaprabhu said, I am a sannyasi and consider myself to be renounced. But if I even hear the name of a woman, what to speak of seeing one, I feel an effect on my mind and body. So even I feel like that. So who is not moved by the sight of a woman? Listen to me, everyone. Let me tell you about Ramananda Rai's activities, even though they are so wonderful and uncommon that they really cannot be properly described. He personally serves Lord Jagannath's young and beautiful Devdasis in every possible way. He personally bathes and dresses them and decorates them with ornaments. While doing so, he naturally sees and touches their bodies. But even so, his mind is never affected. He teaches the girls how to physically express all the moods of love so that they can act them out before Jagannath Dev. But his mind and body are as steady as wood or stone. Indeed, it is amazing that even when he touches such young girls, his mind is not disturbed. Only Ramananda has the right to do such things. And when I see him do them, I can understand that his body is not material, but has been completely transformed into a spiritual entity. Mahaprabhu thus revealed Ramananda Rai's amazing powers to Pradyumna Mishra, and through him to the world. He told Pradyumna that he himself went to Ramananda Rai to hear about Krishna, and advised him to go a second time. This time, Pradyumna was able to hear Ramananda Rai speak about Krishna in such depth and with such insight that he was astonished. So astonished, in fact, that he began to dance in ecstasy. Bhaktivinoda Thakur has written the following comment on the above pastime. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Rai Ramananda had composed a play known as Jagannath Vallabh Natak. This play was performed in the Jagannath temple for his pleasure. Rai Ramananda trained two Devadasi girls, or virgins of God. In Orissa, they are now called Maharis. So he taught them on how to play the emotions appropriate to the gopis in his drama. Since the two Devadasis were playing the roles of chief gopis, Ramananda Rai made no distinction between them. He made no distinction between them and Krishna's beloved mistresses. He considered himself to be their maidservant, and in that spiritual identity, engaged in their service by teaching them to dance and sing for their Lord. Because Ramananda Rai knew himself to be one of Srimati Radharani's handmaidens, he was able to project the identity of his worshipful mistress on the two Devdasis, and this is why he was able to serve them in the most intimate fashion without experiencing the disturbance of mundane sexual desire. So that's the Amrita Pravaha Bhashya to that verse 20 in the 5th chapter of Antya Lila. And Now this is from the same chapter, verses 80 to 85. Says, though a householder, Ramananda Rai is not under the control of the 6 deadly sins, lust, anger, greed, illusion, pride, and malice. Though a so-called materialistic person, he is qualified to instruct those in the renounced order of life. The Lord wished to reveal these qualities of Ramananda Rai, and so he sent Pradyumna Mishra to listen to him speak about Krishna. The Lord knows very well how to make his devotees' virtues public. He considers it to be his personal profit to do so by using various strategies. O devotees, listen carefully to yet another of the Lord's characteristics. He manifests his own majestic nature, though this is usually hidden. He spreads real religious principles through a man from the lowly Shudra class, in order to vanquish the false pride of so-called renunciates and learned scholars. He preached about devotional service, ecstatic love, and the absolute truth by making Ramananda Rai, a grihastha born in a low family, the speaker, while he himself, an exalted Brahmin sannyasi, and Pradyumna Mishra, a pure Brahmin, they both listened and took lessons from him. Śrīla Bhakti Saraswati Gosvāmī Thakur Prabhupada comments on these words from the Chaitanya Charitamrita as follows. So he says, to materialistic vision, Ramananda Rai is a grihastha on the pravritti marg, engaged in an active life in the world, and not a self-controlled brahmachari, vanaprastha, or sannyasi. A materialistic householder is under the control of his senses, and this is the basis of his involvement in worldly activities. A Vaishnava householder who has attained the transcendental state, however, is not at all on the same level, transcending the influences of the 6 deadly sins and standing aloof from the influence of the senses. Ramananda Prabhu accepted the householder state as his role in the pastimes of Śrī Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Ordinary materialistic persons look upon him from a perspective that is tinted with their own desire for sense gratification, and thus consider him to be one of their own. But in fact, his mind had been totally spiritualized through being fixed on the supreme worshipable object. He was thus a Krishna Vishayi, one who seeks only the pleasure of Krishna senses and not his own. He was not an impersonalist or argumentative nihilist opposed to the Lord's transcendental activities. Indeed, he possessed the power to transform the minds of such sannyasis who had abandoned sense gratification and were absorbed in the undifferentiated Brahman without any appreciation for Krishna's form and pastimes, and turn them away from their fundamentally materialistic conception of transcendence, attracting them to the practice of devotional service through hearing and chanting about Krishna's name, form, and activities. Other activities in Puri. When Vallabha came to Puri and into contact with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Lord kept his own glories hidden from him because he knew him to be proud of his learning. He thus preferred to speak to Vallabha about the qualifications of his entourage. At that time, he said of Ramananda Rai that he was expert both in the sambandha, or knowledge of the relationships between God and the living entities, and the prayojan tattva, or knowledge of the highest goal of life. Furthermore, he indicated that he was the greatest connoisseur of the pure and sacred raptures of Vrindavan. So this is from Chaitanya Charitamrita, chapter 7 of the Antyalila. It says, Ramananda Rai is the treasure house of divine sentiments. It was he who disclosed to me that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. No one can fully describe the extent of Ramananda's spiritual power. Through him, I was able to learn about the pure moods of the devotees of Braj. And now this is from chapter 6, verse 9 of Antyalila. Ramananda Rai had the same type of relationship with Mahaprabhu that Subal, Krishna's friend and helper, used to have in Braj. It's interesting, he's being compared to Subal now. And now this is from the 11th chapter of the Antyalila, verse 50. It says, Ramananda Rai was also present in Nilachal when Haridas Thakur passed away. Mahaprabhu praised Haridas Thakur before the devotees, led by Ramananda Rai and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Ramananda during the Lord's separation pangs. When Mahaprabhu spent most of his time in a condition of divine ecstatic madness, he would sometimes disappear from his chambers, even though there were 3 barred doors, through which he had to pass in order to go outside. Once he was found near the lion's gate, his joints loosened and taking on a giant, distended form. He was revived and returned to normal by the loud singing of the holy names. On another occasion, he was found in the Chatak Parvat, which he had taken in a state of trance to be Govardhan. Once again, he had to be pacified by Sankirtan and returned to his home. On these occasions, Ramananda Rai was present with Swarup Damodar. Throughout the 10 transformations of the Lord's ecstatic madness, Divyonmad, Ramananda Rai would recite verses that fit the Lord's emotional state. In this way, he brought Mahaprabhu pleasure. And this is from Antya Lila, chapter 6, verse 6. It says, when the Lord acutely felt pangs of separation from Krishna, only Sri Ramananda Rai's talks about Krishna and the sweet songs of Swarup Damodar kept him alive. Now this is from chapter 15 of Antya Lila. It says, the Lord took Swarup Damodar and Ramananda Rai by the shoulders and said, listen, Swarup and Rama Rai, tell me, what should I do? Tell me what I should do. Where should I go in order to find Krishna? You can tell me the best things to do. You can tell me the best thing to do. In this way, Gauranga would tell his tale of woe to Swarup and Ramananda, and they would console him in his grief. Swarup would sing, and Ramananda would recite Sanskrit verses, giving joy to the Lord with poems from Krishna Karnamrita, the songs of Vidyapati and Geet Govinda. And now this is from Madhya Lila, chapter 2, verse 77. It says, remaining in the company of Swarup and Ramananda both day and night, Mahaprabhu ecstatically relished the songs of Chandidas and Vidyapati and Rai's plays, as well as Krishna Karnamrita and Gita Govinda. Ramananda Rai performed his bhajan in the Jagannath Vallabh garden, a place that was very dear to Mahaprabhu also. As soon as the Lord entered this garden, he would be overwhelmed by feelings of divine love. One day, while the Lord was there, he had a vision of Krishna under an ashok tree. Then the vision was suddenly lost to him, and Mahaprabhu fell to the ground in a faint. Now this is from Antya Lila, chapter 19. It says, the main park in Puri is the Jagannath Vallabh garden. The Lord entered there with his devotees. The trees and flower bushes were in bloom, and it seemed as though it was Vrindavan. The parrots, myna birds, and cuckoos who were singing their songs, and the bees were all buzzing. The parrots, myna birds, and cuckoos were singing their songs, and the bees were all buzzing. Okay, now this is from same chapter, chapter 19 of Antya Lila, verses 85 to 87. Wandering through the garden, he went from tree to tree. When he came to an ashok tree, he suddenly saw Krishna standing there. The Lord started to run towards him, but Krishna laughed at him and disappeared. The Lord was stunned. He had found Krishna and then had lost him again. He lost consciousness and fell to the ground. Through Ramananda Rai and Sri Swarup Damodar Goswāmī, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu joyfully announced to the world that Harinam Sankirtan is the best means to attain the love of God in this age of quarrel. We've recited this verse so many times now. Harshe Prabhu Kohen Shuno Swarup Ramarai. Right? That's the first verse that we recite when we're go to the last chapter of Chaitanya Charitamrita. So the Lord said in a wave of jubilation, he said, listen, Swarup Damodar and Ramananda Rai, in the age of Kali, Harinam Sankirtan is the supreme means of deliverance. There are two opinions about Ramananda Rai's disappearance day. Some people say Jyeshta Krishna Panchami, and others say Vaishak Krishna Panchami. Well, I think we're in Jyeshta now, right? Yeah. So, at least in our Param Gurudev Śrīla Bhakti Goswāmī Maharaj's calendar, he must be of the opinion that it's Jyeshta Krishna Panchami. All right. Jai Śrī Rāmānanda Rai Ki Jai. That's our program for today. Why don't we just sing very quickly the song written by Ramananda Rai, Kalayati Nayanam. Akalayati Nayanam Deshi Deshi Valitam Pankajamiva Mridu Maruta Chalitam Kelivipinam Pravishati Radha Pratipada Samudita Manasi Jabada. Can't find it. That's so weird. Vinidadati mridu mantarapadam rachayati kunjara gate manubadam janayati rudra gajadipamoditam Ramananda Rai Kavi Karitam Kalayati Nayanam Dishi Dishi Valitam Pankaja Miva Mridu Maruta Chalitam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nitai Gaur Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaur Hari Bol Nitai Gaur Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. Jai Shri Sachinandan Gaur Hari Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Vinod Bihari Ju Ki Jai Shri Govinda Gopinath Maran Mohan Ju Ki Jai Jai Shri Gurudev Ki Jai Jai Shri Param Gurudev Ki Jai Jai Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Shri Rupanu Gauriya Guru Varga Ki Jai Sapa Shaji Gaur Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopi Gan Ki Jai Shri Giriraj Maharaj Ki Jai Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai Jai Shri Swarup Damodar Rai Ramananda Rishi Gaur Parshad Vrinda Ki Jai Jai Shri Rai Ramananda Ki Jai Tadya Shubha Tirobhav Titi Ki Jai Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita Ki Jai Shri Krishna Kaviraj Goswami Pad Ki Jai Jai Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Samagata Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shinitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo Vrindai Tulsi Devai Priyaya Keshavashacha Krishna Bhakti Pradadevi Satyavatai Namo Namaha Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namo. Dandavat pranams, Nri Hari Prabhu, Bhavatarani Mataji, Sarveshwari Mataji, Rukmini Didi, Yashoda Mataji, Anadi Krishna Prabhu, and on YouTube and Facebook, Vidyalala Sadidi, Rohini Nandan Prabhu, Gargaraj Ji, Zulma Natalia. If you have a devotional name, you could let me know what it is, and I don't know what to call you. But Dandavat pranams. And I just see Rohini Nandan Prabhu sent me some WhatsApp messages. Let me just see what they say. Yes, so just more confirmation about that he is Vishaka Saki and Gaur Lila. But yeah, we see that there are many. That's the thing with when it comes to these topics. Um, Actually, the topics of what is our swarup and all those details, that's also something that's not, it's not a monolithic idea. It's not like there's just one way of looking at it. Srila Rupa Goswami explains it in one way, completely different from how Sanatana Goswami explains it in a completely different way, and Jiva Goswami explains it in a completely different way. I'm just learning about this topic now. And it's not that they are in conflict with each other, but they are seeing from different perspectives. And so when it comes to these topics of who's who and all these things, it's such a it's like we it's our tendency to always try to simplify things and just make things really clear and black and white. But with these types of topics, it's not like that at all. And so that's why Mahabhagavats, pure devotees, will be of the opinion that Ramananda Rai is Lalita Devi, and then the others will be of the opinion that he's Vishaka Devi, and that he's Arjuna, the Pandava Arjuna, and also our Krishna's Priyanarmasaka Arjuna, and all these things. And you can't say that any of these ideas are wrong. You can't say, no, well, it has to be one of them. They can't all be right, but yes, they can all be right. And that's why we should always be careful when it comes to these types of topics, not to, yeah, try to make them too shallow and, yeah. Oh, cool. Zulma says that she's studying that Chaitanya Charitamrita. Cool. Nice. Um, wait, so I'm just looking at another thing. So Rohini Nandan Prabhu said that this is what we heard from Gurudev. What I mentioned about Shikimahiri about being, it's not a speculation. Okay, cool. Great. It's nice to get that confirmed. And he just sent me thing. Ramananda Rai, oh yeah, and then another place. Ramananda Rai is Vishaka Saki in Krishna's pastimes. Yeah, so for us who are in the line of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and also the line of our Srila Gurudev and like that, then we we are more like of that opinion that Ramananda Rai is Vishaka Saki. But at the same time, we shouldn't say that the other ideas are wrong. So yeah. All right. Is there anything anybody wants to mention before I end the stream for today? All right, so I'll see you all tomorrow. Tomorrow we will continue reading commentaries by our Srila Gurudev on the first verse of Shikshashtakam. Thank you so much for joining. Jai Shri Radhe.